In today's video, we're going for a Massachusetts day hike along the single most famous and historic trail in Boston. Here we are in the Boston Common following the brick line that is the Freedom Trail. You can follow and walk on top of this brick line for the entire way. It makes it very easy to follow the trail through the winding streets of Boston. And we have our first stop on the trail, the Massachusetts State House, where both the legislative branch and the executive branch of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts sit, where they're presided over by the sacred cod. Go ahead, look that up, folks. There's a 4-foot wooden cod that hangs over the chamber for at least 300 years. That reminds all those silly politicians that the codfish is truly the one in charge. The next stop on the trail is the Park Street Church, which was first built in 1809 and used to be the most prominent landmark you would see as you were approaching the city of Boston. And here we have the Granary burying ground, which has a lot of prominent individuals buried here from the Revolutionary times, including Sam Adams as well as Paul Revere and the parents of Benjamin Franklin. As such, it's a very popular destination on a lot of the Boston guided tours, so be sure to come here early before all those tour groups clog up all of the different pathways. They sure like to decorate their headstones quite differently than we do these days. Next up is the King's Chapel and the King's Chapel Burying Ground, which is, I think, the oldest cemetery here in Boston and maybe in all of the United States. There are some people buried in here that were passengers on the freaking Mayflower, so talk about old. This church was originally founded in 1630, but the current building you're looking at now was built in 1754. It's certainly a theme when you visit Boston. You'll see lots of old churches and buildings that are really quite small, surrounded by the large modern skyscrapers of today. This is my favorite stop on the Freedom Trail, the old corner bookstore, famous enough to get a plaque and a marker on the trail, but still not famous enough not to be a Chipotle. Good spot to stop for lunch. Oh my goodness. One of the coolest older buildings here in Boston is the old State House with a lion and a unicorn on its roof. This is the oldest public building still standing in Boston, built in 1713. And you can find the Boston Massacre site right next to it. Next, the Freedom Trail will skirt you just by Faneuil Hall and the Quincy Market, which is quite a popular Boston tourist destination in its own right. A lot of very important events related to the Revolutionary era took place here, but in the present day, there's a nice food court and a lot of cool places to stop for lunch. We're starting to venture out of the downtown area now and head more towards the north end, where there's a lot of fun, different places to eat and explore. The most important part of any hike, getting some ice cream along the way. For those wondering, the flavor I got was called Graham Central Station, and yes, it was freaking delicious. We have now crossed over into the North End, which is also known as Boston's Little Italy. A lot of people like to come here to eat at the nice, fun, authentic Italian restaurants and get a delicious cannoli for dessert. But it's also home to the Paul Revere House, which is the oldest standing structure in all of Boston. If you come at the right time of year, there are a lot of fun festivals that happen in the North End, as you can see from the banners that they currently have displayed as I was walking through. Now that is the famous Old North Church that everyone knows so well from that Paul Revere poem. This is where he hung the lanterns, one if by land, two if by sea. And I think it might be my favorite stop on the Freedom Trail. You can go inside, they have a crypt that you get a guided tour if you want to explore that, but it's very cool to see inside that very old traditional church. The last burying ground here on the list, we have the Copp's Hill Burying Ground, where they buried a lot of the merchants, artisan, and craftspeople who lived in the North End at the time. We're now crossing the bridge from the north end of Boston over into Charlestown. This is a detour. There's usually a different walking bridge, but that is under construction at the moment. So follow the detour. They have a nice temporary painted line on the ground so you know exactly where you need to walk. Now this is my absolute favorite stop on the Freedom Trail. We are entering the Charlestown Navy Yard to check out the USS Constitution. The ship also has the nickname Old Ironsides, which it earned in the War of 1812, and it is currently the oldest commissioned warship still afloat.
That's not, the captain, the books, anybody really. Just the handle.
Why do I all of a sudden feel the need to watch Master and Commander again? It's just so much fun to explore the upper decks and then crawl down inside the lower decks and shimmy through all the different nooks and crannies. I think maybe I'm a little bit too tall to have been a sailor on this ship.
But I think that many officers acting based on his own faith. He was Catholic and he felt he was doing service for the church. So I think, I would do the story, yes, he doesn't want to go back and we also have to do this research.
There is also a nice museum that goes along with the ship that you can explore as well and learn a lot more history about the USS Constitution. There is another ship that you can explore right near the USS Constitution. This is a World War II era destroyer known as the USS Cassin Young. It's also super fun to go up and explore all the different decks on this ship as well. And as we leave the Navy Yard, you're seeing our final destination rising up in the distance. We're on our way to Bunker Hill. There it is, the final stop on the Freedom Trail. That's the Bunker Hill Monument, where it marks the spot of the first major battle of the Revolutionary War.
And apologies everyone, but that's it, a rather anticlimactic end to the video. Unfortunately, Bunker Hill Monument is closed for restoration, so I can't go up there to get the good views from the top. Maybe I have some photos from the last time I was up there. I'll flash those on the screen now. Either way, oh well. Hopefully it'll be done by the time you guys go try this one out. I will see you in the guide.
Well, I finally freaking did it. I went and hiked the most famous trail in Boston and became a tourist in my own adopted new city. That was the Boston Common, North End, USS Constitution, and Bunker Hill Monument via the Freedom Trail located in Boston, Massachusetts. The trail through the heart of Boston to the various historic sites was relatively flat with no noticeable elevation gain along the whole trail. And we followed the red bricks of the Freedom Trail past each historic marker and landmark for around 4.4 miles total. Now, if you've already been inspired to go tackle this trail yourself, first, definitely go down and hit that like button and let me know how much you loved it. It really helps me out a lot. And then while you're down there, check out the custom all trails map that I've created with pictures and landmarks that I've linked in the description down below. Now, you all know what I'm gonna say. This one's very easy to rate. It's a walk in the woods. All of the trail is freaking paved. You follow the bricks. It's nice paved sidewalks. It's nice paved roads. No elevation gain, maybe a few staircases here and there, but this is a very doable trail for most people. Now, I definitely think I'm gonna recommend this trail, especially if it's your first time in Boston. It really helps you knock out a lot of those historic landmarks all in one fell swoop. Plus, you get to see a nice cross section of the city from both downtown and the North End, a lot of cool little neighborhoods throughout Boston. It is very touristy and busy though, so, you know, maybe it's not the place you would go hike all the time, but it is one definitely to come check out for a first time. My personal favorite spots along the trail were, of course, the Old North Church and that little park area there, and I also loved exploring the USS Constitution, and I was really quite disappointed that I didn't get to climb Bunker Hill Monument. Those are my 3 favorite stops on the trail, but there's so many other great ones for you. Definitely come check out Boston's Freedom Trail. But hey, that's just my opinion. Now go get hiking.